My name's Kyle, I'm 41, and I've always prided myself on being the kind of dad who shows up. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, fully present. Maybe it's because I didn't get that growing up. My parents did their best, sure, but best is generous. When most of your childhood memories involve being compared to your siblings, like you're a car that came off the line with a few screws loose. My younger sister, Melissa, was always the golden one. My mom used to call her our little ray of sunshine, while I was more like the kid who didn't quite find his footing. But that's fine. I learned early on that praise isn't a currency I could count on, so I stopped chasing it. Instead, I poured everything into building a life I could be proud of, one that felt like mine, not one handed down with strings and guilt attached. I've been raising my daughter, Ivy, on my own since she was 10. Her mom, my ex-wife Amanda, left in a flurry of tears and dramatic exits after our marriage finally snapped under the weight of her restlessness. She wanted more. Not in the greedy way, just more. More adventure, more space, more everything I wasn't. We parted with bitter civility and split custody at first, but after a year, Amanda called and said she was moving across the country to start over, and that maybe Ivy should stay with me full-time until she settled. That was 5 years ago. She hasn't settled. She FaceTimes once every couple of months, sends postcards from wherever she's landed this time. But Ivy stopped waiting for her to come home a long time ago, and I swore I'd never make her feel like she was second best. Ivy's 16 now, and she's this strange, wonderful mix of fierce and gentle. She plays violin like it's a secret she's telling just to herself, and she has this dry sense of humor that catches people off guard. She's shy, but not quiet, if that makes sense. Like she's watching everything, filing it away before deciding whether it's worth her time. When she told me she was nominated for prom court this year, I saw a flash of surprise in her eyes, like maybe, just maybe, the world was starting to see her the way I always had. I'll admit, I got choked up. I know, it's just prom, but to her it was everything. Especially because the last few years haven't been easy socially. She's never been part of the loud crowd, the ones who post every Starbucks run and spend weekends rehearsing TikTok dances. And that was fine by her, until high school started turning into a popularity contest she never signed up for. Being nominated? That felt like a win for the underdogs. The dress she chose was a soft slate blue that made her eyes look like storm clouds right before a summer rain. I remember when we first saw it in the shop window. She didn't say anything, just stopped mid-step and stared at it like it had whispered her name. I watched her fingers hover over the fabric, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she deserved to even touch it. I asked if she wanted to try it on, and she just nodded, not meeting my eyes. It fit like it had been made for her. When she stepped out of the changing room, the silence between us was heavy with unspoken emotion. She smiled this small, unsure smile. "Is it too much?" she asked. And I shook my head. "No," I told her. "It's exactly enough." We bought it. I didn't care that it was a little over what I'd planned to spend. That look in her eyes, that confidence, that light, you don't put a price on that. Now, here's where the family part comes in. Melissa and I, well, we talk. Not often, not deeply, but enough to keep things from completely crumbling. She's got twin daughters, Bella and Lily, both 17, both cut from the same cloth as she is, sharp, ambitious, and painfully aware of how to climb every social ladder in sight. They've never been cruel to Ivy. Not directly, but their version of kindness is thin and transactional. Compliments with teeth. "Oh my God, Ivy, you're so brave for wearing your hair like that." That kind of thing. And I think Ivy always tried to ignore it. She never said much after family gatherings, just got quiet and curled up on the couch with her sketchpad, drawing for hours in silence. I figured if she wasn't complaining, maybe it wasn't that bad. That was my mistake. 2 weeks before prom, Melissa texted me, asking if the girls could stay the night at our place while she and her husband went to some wine-tasting weekend upstate. Ivy and I had plans, but I figured we could shift things around. "It'll be good for them to hang out," Melissa wrote. "Bond a little." I should have said no, but I still have that little voice in the back of my head, the one trained to keep the peace, to avoid waves. So I agreed. They arrived Friday evening, all lip gloss and giggles, dragging wheeled duffel bags behind them like they were checking into a hotel. Bella gave Ivy a once-over and said, "Cute socks," in that tone that means the opposite. Lily asked to see her prom dress. Ivy hesitated. "It's not really ready yet," she said. but Bella was already peeking into the garment bag hanging on the back of Ivy's door. "This," she said, pulling it halfway out. "It's nice. Kinda plain, though." Ivy stood frozen, lips pressed into a line. "I like it," she said quietly. And that was the end of that exchange, at least on the surface. That night, I went to bed early. Long week at work, and I trusted the girls to be civil. I shouldn't have, because what I'd find the next evening would shake something in me loose, something I hadn't even realized was still there. That familiar ache of being the lesser sibling, watching someone you love be treated like an afterthought. Except this time, it wasn't me. It was my daughter, and I was about to learn that Melissa's little rays of sunshine, they knew exactly how to cast a shadow. The next morning started normal enough. I made pancakes for the girls, chocolate chip, Ivy's favorite. She was quiet, picking at her plate while Bella and Lily talked over each other about prom groups and after-parties and whether Ryan or Chase looked better in a tux. Ivy smiled occasionally, but it didn't reach her eyes. I chalked it up to nerves. She had been so excited for prom, but maybe now that it was close, it was getting real. I figured we'd talk later, once the twins went out shopping or glued themselves to their phones for a few hours. They stayed all day. I kept waiting for the usual teen exodus, to the mall, to meet friends, anywhere. But they didn't leave, just hovered around, rotating between scrolling, talking, and occasionally accidentally walking into Ivy's room. I could hear them, low murmurs that would go silent whenever I walked down the hallway. Once, I caught Bella closing Ivy's door behind her in a rush, eyes wide like she'd just been caught shoplifting. "Everything okay?" I asked, and she smiled too quickly. "Yeah, just helping her pick earrings." That didn't sit right, but I told myself to let it go. I didn't want to be the paranoid dad. That evening, Melissa came to pick them up. She floated through the door with the same air she always had, like she was in a hurry, but still managing to act like royalty being inconvenienced. "Thanks again for watching them," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "I'm so behind on everything. Planning prom photos, coordinating with other moms. It's like a full-time job." I smiled tightly. "They're 17. I'm sure they can pick their own flower arrangements." Melissa laughed, clearly thinking I was joking. Then she turned to Ivy. "You're going with that group from orchestra, right? That girl with the purple hair, and, what's her name? Joyce." Ivy nodded. "Jocelyn, right? I thought it was so sweet of them to invite you," Melissa said, in that sugary tone that dripped with something else. Ivy didn't respond. Her eyes flicked to mine, and there was something there, an almost imperceptible tremble behind her calm. I should have pressed. I didn't. Sunday came and went. Ivy spent most of it in her room. I knocked once, asked if she wanted to go over any last-minute things for prom week. Hair appointment, rides, corsage, but she just said she had a headache. "I'm fine, Dad," she added, and that should have been my cue. Ivy doesn't dismiss like that. She's quiet. Yes, but never cold. Not with me. By Wednesday, I'd convinced myself she was just anxious. Her group had rented a limo, and she'd finally gotten the details from Jocelyn that morning. She showed me a photo of her heels, silver, delicate little things with thin straps that I was pretty sure would destroy her feet before she even hit the dance floor. But she was excited again. The light was back, just a little. I told myself everything was fine. Friday, the day before prom, was when everything cracked. I came home from work around 6, arms full of takeout because I knew she'd be too jittery to eat anything normal. I opened the front door, called out, "Ivy." I got Ty, but was met with silence. Odd. Her bedroom light was on, though, so I headed back there, kicking off my shoes in the hallway. And then I heard it. A small, broken sound, like a breath caught halfway between a sob and a gasp. I opened her door gently and saw her sitting on the floor in front of her open closet. The dress lay across her lap in pieces. Literal pieces. The satin bodice had been torn jaggedly at the seams. One strap was dangling by a thread. The skirt, once a flowing waterfall of pale blue, was slashed right down the center. Threads frayed. Fabric mutilated. It didn't look like an accident. This was violent. Ivy was holding one of the sleeves in her hands, her fingers trembling around the ripped edge like she was still trying to understand what she was looking at. "Ivy," I said softly. "What happened?" She looked up at me, eyes red and glassy. "I don't know," she whispered, but it sounded like a lie, not to deceive, but to protect. "I found it like this when I got home from school." I stepped closer, crouched down beside her. "Did someone come in here?" She didn't answer right away. Her jaw clenched. The zipper was caught last week. I took it to Nana's to see if she could fix it. Nana, my mom. Melissa had dropped off some things that day for the girls. I hadn't connected the dots. Ivy hadn't said anything because she didn't want to seem ungrateful. She said she'd drop it back off with Bella and Lily when they came to your place Friday. Ivy said, voice hollow. I stared at the shredded dress in my daughter's lap, the full weight of it settling like concrete in my chest. Did you say anything to her? She said she'd make sure they were careful with it. Her voice cracked. She even told me not to get too confident about prom court, that the twins would probably win. That was it. The tipping point. Something primal stirred in me. Not just anger, but this deep, burning rage I hadn't felt in years. The kind that doesn't explode, but simmers, focused and cold. My daughter, my gentle, quiet, brave daughter, had been targeted. Her confidence, her joy, ripped up and scattered like scraps on her bedroom floor. And my sister's girls? They weren't smirking toddlers anymore. They were old enough to know better. Old enough to plan this. I took a breath. Get your shoes on. She blinked. What? We're going to Nana's. Dad. No, I don't want to make a scene. Ivy, I said, meeting her eyes. You didn't ask for this. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not the one making a scene. She hesitated, then nodded. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, the sun was dipping below the trees. Melissa's car was already there. She must have swung by to pick up something. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. Ivy stayed close to my side as we walked up the porch. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding. Not with nerves, just rage, kept carefully in check. My mother opened the door, surprised to see us. Kyle. Ivy. What a surprise. We need to talk, I said. Her smile faltered. Of course. Come in. The moment we stepped inside, I heard Bella and Lily laughing from the kitchen. My hands clenched at my sides. I led Ivy to the living room, then turned to my mom. Where's the dress? She blinked. Excuse me. Ivy's prom dress. The one you gave to the twins to bring over. She paused, visibly uncomfortable. Melissa said she'd make sure they were careful. She never got it in one piece, I said, keeping my voice level. It was torn to shreds. Deliberately. My mother's face went pale. I'm sure it was an accident. It wasn't. Behind us, the twins appeared in the doorway. They saw Ivy, then me, then the look on my face. Bella's expression didn't change. Lily looked a little nervous, but neither said a word. You girls want to explain? I asked, turning to them. Bella shrugged. It was just a joke. Ivy inhaled sharply beside me. Lily added, we didn't think she'd freak out. She shouldn't be the prettiest anyway, Bella muttered under her breath. It's not fair. That was it. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. My mother opened her mouth, but no words came. Melissa, finally walking in from the back, froze when she saw us. What's going on? I turned to her slowly. Your daughters destroyed Ivy's prom dress. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, come on, Kyle. They're teenagers. Drama over a piece of fabric. Try telling that to her face, I said. Try telling your niece that her only dress, the one she loved, was just drama. Melissa rolled her eyes. Maybe if she had thicker skin. Ivy stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. Why do you hate me so much? The room fell silent again. My mother looked down. Melissa crossed her arms. And the twins? They didn't say a word. No apology. No remorse. Just smirks. That's when I took Ivy's hand. We're done here. Kyle, wait. My mom called out as we turned toward the door. I didn't. Ivy was shaking. Whether from anger or heartbreak or both, I couldn't tell. We got back into the car, and for a while, we just sat there. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then Melissa. Ignored. And then, 20 minutes later, another call from Mom again. This time I answered, because her text beforehand read only one thing. Please don't tell the school. They'll expel them. I answered. She was crying. Kyle, she said. Please, please, they made a mistake. They're sorry. They didn't mean it. You can't report this. If the school finds out, they're off prom court. They could be expelled. I didn't say anything. I just looked over at Ivy, who was staring out the window, her fingers tracing the hem of her hoodie like she was trying to hold herself together. My mom kept talking, desperate, begging, and that's when something inside me snapped into place. A decision, not made in anger, but in clarity, because this wasn't just about a dress. It wasn't even about prom. This was about the way my daughter had been dismissed, minimized, made to feel like less, by a family that should have protected her. So I ended the call with a single sentence. But I won't tell you what I said. Not yet. Because what happened next? That's where the real story begins. The days that followed weren't quiet, but they were hollow. Saturday morning came, prom day. I woke up early, not because I had plans, but because sleep had become impossible. You know that weird sort of adrenaline hangover you get after a confrontation? When you've already yelled, already slammed the metaphorical door, but your body's still vibrating like it missed the memo that it's over. That was me. Ivy hadn't mentioned prom again. Not once. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just folded in on herself. Moved like she was wading through thick fog. I watched her eat cereal with a blank expression, the spoon barely clinking against the bowl. It was the kind of quiet that scared me more than any screaming ever could. When I asked if she wanted to go dress shopping, just to see what we could find, she shook her head. It's not worth it, she said. It's just one night. But it's your night. She looked up at me, and the sadness in her face was so heavy it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Not anymore. Ivy spent most of the day in her room with the door half shut. Not closed, just ajar. Like she didn't want to fully disappear, but didn't want to be seen either. I gave her space. But the guilt tore at me. I should have never let those girls stay over. I should have protected her better. Should have said no to my sister. Should have read the signs earlier. Should have. Could have. Didn't. Around 6 p.m., the exact time Ivy was supposed to be taking photos with her group in the park, I knocked gently. She didn't answer. I opened the door slowly and saw her sitting on her bed, still in her hoodie and sweatpants, scrolling through photos her friends had posted. The limo. The corsages. Jocelyn in a sparkly purple dress, arms thrown around another girl, all teeth and joy. Ivy didn't look away from the screen when she spoke. They look happy. I sat down beside her, unsure of what to say. They miss you. She shrugged. They'll be fine without me. A pause. Then, I just wanted to feel like I belonged. That sentence gutted me. It's one thing for your kid to be left out. It's another for them to believe they deserve it. Like some part of them thinks they were never supposed to fit in. I didn't try to fix it. There's no speech for that. No platitude to undo the sting of betrayal. So I just stayed. We didn't talk much. I think I told her a story about how I once showed up to my own middle school dance in a button-up 2 sizes too big and got so nervous I spilled fruit punch on the principal. She cracked a tiny smile. Progress. By Sunday, Ivy was back in motion, if only barely. She still went to school, still did her homework. But there was a change in her posture, in the way she moved through the house. Like she was bracing herself for something. The prom photos hit the school bulletin board by Tuesday. A friend texted me a picture. Jocelyn and the others had gone without her. They didn't post anything mean, didn't mock her online. But her absence was a presence all its own. A few classmates asked why Ivy hadn't come. Someone started a rumor she was too depressed to show up after not getting nominated. It wasn't true. She had gotten nominated. But after the dress incident, she had withdrawn. Quietly. Without complaint. And high school eats quiet kids alive. Melissa didn't reach out again. Mom did. Twice. The second voicemail she left was tearful, talking about how the school had heard rumors about vandalism, and if someone did report it, the girls might lose their scholarships. Apparently, Lily had applied for a leadership award, and Bella had been offered a spot in a mentorship program. Don't ruin their future, she said, over some misunderstanding. Some misunderstanding. Like the slash dress had fallen apart on its own. I didn't respond. But inside, something had shifted. See, I thought rock bottom would look like rage. Like confrontation and public humiliation and viral justice. But it didn't. It looked like watching your daughter disappear behind her own eyes. It looked like hearing your own mother call your daughter's heartbreak a misunderstanding. It looked like realizing that nothing was going to change, unless you made it change. So that's what I did. Not loudly. Not at first. I started small. I met with Ivy's school counselor the following week. Not to report the twins, yet, but to ask about how Ivy was doing socially, mentally, academically. Mrs. Rayburn, the counselor, was warm and observant. She said Ivy was one of the sharpest students in her class, but had started shrinking herself this year. She's got this quiet brilliance, she told me. But lately, it feels like she's hiding it. I didn't cry, but I felt something crack. I asked if Ivy could join any end-of-year projects, anything that might give her purpose. Mrs. Rayburn said they were looking for students to help organize the senior art showcase in May. Ivy wasn't a senior, but she was known for her drawing. Maybe she'd be willing to volunteer. I brought it up over dinner. They want me to help? She asked. Ford paused midair. They asked me to ask you. I clarified. It's your choice. She didn't say yes immediately, but 2 days later, I saw her pull out her sketchpad again. That was the first piece of light I'd seen in weeks. The second came when I decided to stop avoiding the topic of what had happened. Not to make her relive it, but to reclaim it. I asked her if she wanted to talk to someone. A therapist. She was hesitant. Said she didn't want to be dramatic. That word again. As if what happened to her had been her fault for feeling it too deeply. It's not drama, I told her. It's damage. And you don't have to carry it alone. She agreed, eventually. Quietly. And I found a local therapist with a reputation for working with teens who felt invisible. Ivy started seeing her once a week. After the second session, she said, it's weird, but good weird. By mid-April, she was sketching dresses again. Not for herself, but for the art show. She created a series called What I Would Have Worn, a collection of abstract fashion designs painted over the outlines of shattered mannequins. Her counselor said it was one of the most moving submissions they'd ever seen. Meanwhile, I began to collect my own information. I didn't want revenge, not the petty kind. Not just exposing Melissa or tanking the girls' reputations. What I wanted was accountability. Not for Ivy's sake. Not even for mine. But because this, what happened, was a symptom of something bigger. Entitlement. Favoritism. Enabling. And the next time I was given the chance to stand in front of that system, I wasn't going to blink. By late April, the school had started looking into anonymous complaints that had been submitted to the Student Integrity Board. Someone had filled out a detailed report about the destruction of personal property by Bella and Lily. Names, dates, descriptions of the dress, a record of the social media posts from that weekend. Even screenshots of Bella's Snapchat messages saying things like, if she thinks she's going to be prom queen in that dress, she's delusional. None of that came from Ivy, and none of it came from me directly either. Let's just say I got help. Jocelyn, who had felt awful for not pressing Ivy harder to come that night, had sent Ivy an apology. They'd reconnected. And one night, while on a video call with Ivy, she admitted that Lily had shown off the ripped dress on FaceTime the night before prom. Posted about it. Jocelyn had screenshots, backups, texts, evidence. I told her we weren't going to start a war. But if she felt like what happened wasn't okay, and she wanted to do something about it, really wanted to, then there were options. She chose her side. I didn't coach her. I didn't have to. Kids may be cruel, but some of them are brave. The investigation was quiet at first, but whispers travel fast in high school hallways. And on the day the art showcase opened, Ivy stood beside her display, dressed not in satin or glitter or anything even remotely prom-like. Just a simple black blouse and jeans. But there was a confidence in her stance, a kind of peace. A teacher walked by, paused in front of her work, and said, "This feels like a protest." Ivy smiled. It kind of is. The showcase was a hit. Her sketches were raw, haunting, and beautiful. Several students stopped to take photos. One girl whispered, "This is about prom, right?" And Ivy just nodded. That night, as we drove home, she said, "I think I'm okay now." I didn't say anything right away. Just gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "I still get mad sometimes," she added. "But not at myself." I looked at her, at this kid who had been broken and rebuilt herself piece by piece without ever raising her voice. "You shouldn't have had to go through any of it," I said. She shrugged. "Maybe not. But I did. And now I know how strong I am." There it was. Not closure, but something close to it. Something steady. Still, one thing lingered in the air. Justice. Not revenge, but justice. And that was coming. Because a few days later, Ivy got called into the guidance office. And what she learned there? Well, that's where things really begin to unravel. The guidance office always made Ivy nervous. She once told me it felt like walking into a room where your entire future was waiting to be stamped. Approved. Denied. Judged. Labeled. Even if you hadn't done anything wrong, you walked in feeling guilty. Like the walls themselves knew your secrets. So when she got called down unexpectedly, her heart pounded. She texted me, "Getting called to Mrs. Rayburn's office." No idea why. I told her to breathe, that it was probably something minor. But in my gut, I knew. I knew it wasn't minor. Because ever since the anonymous report had been submitted, with screenshots, timelines, and witness statements, the school had been circling. Quietly, carefully. The Integrity Board, made up of a few teachers and administrators, took these things seriously. Vandalism, harassment, anything that could be classified as bullying with malicious intent. It was all on the table. And when Ivy walked into that office and saw not just Mrs. Rayburn, but the assistant principal, Mr. Hargrove, sitting beside her, she knew it too. "Take a seat, Ivy," Mrs. Rayburn said gently, gesturing to the chair across from them. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharper than usual. Ivy sat down slowly. "First of all," Mrs. Rayburn began, "you're not in trouble." That helped, but only a little. "We've been reviewing an anonymous report submitted to the Integrity Board," Mr. Hargrove said. "It contains allegations of property destruction and targeted harassment in connection with this year's prom." Ivy said nothing. Her stomach flipped. "You were the victim in that report." Still nothing. She didn't know what to say. She hadn't filed anything. Mrs. Rayburn slid a folder across the desk. Inside were color printouts. Photos of her dress, ripped and gutted. Screenshots from Snapchat. Text messages. Ivy's throat tightened. "We've confirmed the accuracy of these," Mr. Hargrove continued. "Multiple witnesses corroborated what happened, including a student who saw the garment bag being mishandled by Bella and Lily just days before prom." Ivy blinked. "Who?" "We can't give names. But I will say this." Mrs. Rayburn leaned forward, voice softening. "You're not invisible, Ivy. People saw what happened, and some of them finally decided to speak up." Something stirred in her chest. A mix of confusion, disbelief, and something else. Something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. "So what happens now?" she asked. "That's partially up to you." Mr. Hargrove folded his hands. "The school board has policies regarding malicious intent and destruction of property. Expulsion is rare, but suspension is not, especially with documented proof." Ivy swallowed. "I didn't ask anyone to report it." "We know. But if they get suspended," her voice trailed off. Mrs. Rayburn glanced at the assistant principal, then back to Ivy. "You don't owe anyone your silence. You didn't make this happen. They did. You can't fix what they broke. All you can do is decide what you're willing to carry and what you're ready to put down." Ivy sat there for a long moment, then nodded. "Just once. I don't want revenge," she said, "but I want it to matter." And just like that, the match was struck. Later that evening, she told me everything. We sat at the dining room table, her sketch pad open between us, filled with half-finished designs for the art show. She traced one absent-mindedly as she spoke, the lines getting darker with every pass. "They want to suspend them," she said. "Maybe pull them from student council and prom court." I didn't interrupt. "And they said I can make a statement. Not publicly, just for the board. To explain what happened. To explain how it affected me." I looked at her. "Do you want to?" She hesitated. "I think I do." Then she looked up at me. "But I want to do it my way." That's when her plan started to take shape. It wasn't a scheme or a trap. Ivy didn't want to humiliate anyone. That's not who she was. But she did want the truth to land where it needed to. Hard. Undeniably. She wanted the people who ignored her to see her, to hear her, and to realize just how deeply their silence had cut. She spent the next few nights writing a statement, draft after draft, each one clearer, stronger, more vulnerable. She wasn't just recounting facts. She was opening a vein, not for pity, but for power. "I don't want to tell them what Bella and Lily did," she told me one night, tapping her pen against the table. "I want to tell them what it felt like." She read me the first paragraph. "When I walked into my room and saw the dress ripped apart, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down and stared at it for 30 minutes before I even moved. Because somewhere deep down, I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I had gotten too happy, too hopeful. And that's the part that hurts more than the dress. That I believed them. I had to excuse myself for a moment. Told her I needed to check on the laundry. But in reality, I just stood in the hallway for a minute, pressing my fingers into my eyes until the tears backed off." She submitted the statement the next morning, and that would have been enough. But then something unexpected happened. One of the senior teachers, Ms. Galvez, Ivy's English lit mentor, asked if she'd be willing to read part of it aloud during the senior showcase assembly. They were doing a segment on student voices, and Ivy's statement had moved several staff members to tears. At first, she said no. But then, a few hours later, she changed her mind. I want to do it, she told me. You sure? She nodded. It won't be just for them. It'll be for me. The school approved it. And suddenly, there was a spotlight waiting for Ivy, a real one, on stage, in front of her classmates, her teachers, and most importantly, the very people who had tried to dim her. While she rehearsed her speech, I began laying a few quiet foundations of my own. Because this wasn't just Ivy's story anymore. It was mine, too. See, I'd spent years being the lesser sibling, the disappointment. I'd taken the back seat, the high road, the quiet dignity route more times than I could count. And where had it gotten me? A mother who begged for silence, not justice. A sister who taught her daughters that cruelty was a form of dominance. And a daughter who nearly lost her sense of worth because no one in the family thought she'd fight back. I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. I began compiling everything. A timeline. A folder of texts Melissa had sent. Her deflection. Her dismissal. I made a point to speak to the school's parent board anonymously. Melissa was on it. And I knew they'd be interested to learn about the kind of parenting she actually condoned. I didn't smear. I didn't lie. I just told the truth. Pointed. Measured. Undeniable. I also reached out to a local community arts center, the same one where Ivy used to take Saturday morning sketching classes. I told them about her prom project, about the What I Would Have Worn series, about how it resonated. They offered her a spot in their summer youth showcase. I don't have to compete for it, she asked when I told her. No, I said, you already earned it. But the biggest move came when the school asked if I wanted to sit on a panel discussion about bullying and student mental health for their annual parents' forum. Apparently, my name had come up after several teachers mentioned how involved I'd been in supporting Ivy. And that was my moment. To speak. To show up. Not just for Ivy, but for every kid like her. For every parent who had stayed silent to keep the peace. The week of the assembly arrived with a strange calm. Ivy was nervous, but ready. She practiced in front of the mirror, then in front of me, then, finally, on the stage at rehearsal. Each time, her voice got a little steadier. Each word cut a little deeper. And on the night of the showcase, the auditorium was packed. Students, parents, teachers, staff. Bella and Lily sat in the third row with Melissa. Ivy stood backstage, holding her speech in both hands. I'm not scared, she whispered. I know, I said. But it's okay if you are. She turned, met my eyes. Not anymore. And then they called her name. She stepped into the light. And what she said next, what she became in that moment, that changed everything. But I'll save that for later. Because while the truth was finally being spoken, the consequences, they were just beginning to fall. The room was silent when Ivy stepped onto the stage. Not the kind of silence that feels polite or passive, but the kind that leans forward, breath held, eyes fixed. The kind of silence that knows it's about to witness something important. She stood center stage under the spotlight, wearing a black turtleneck and jeans, hair pulled back, no makeup, no sparkles, no glitter, no costume, just herself. Calm, steady, unshaken. And then she spoke. When people say high school is about finding yourself, she began, her voice clear. They don't tell you how many people will try to take that away from you first. A pause. No movement from the audience. I was nominated for prom court this year. It surprised me. Not because I didn't think I deserved it, but because, for the first time, it felt like someone else did too. She glanced up. And then, 3 days before prom, my dress was destroyed. Not ruined in a spill. Not ripped by accident. It was slashed, piece by piece. By people I trusted. People who told me, she shouldn't be the prettiest anyway. A quiet gasp rippled through the crowd. Melissa stiffened in her seat. Bella's face paled. Lily stared down at her lap. They didn't just cut a dress, Ivy said, her voice gaining weight. They cut into who I thought I was. Who I thought I could be. Another pause. But I didn't stay down. She stepped slightly forward. Just one small movement, but it felt seismic. Because I realized something. The people who try to dim your light are always the ones afraid of how bright it could get. And they can cut the fabric. They can cut the straps. But they can't cut me. Silence again. Then, applause. Slow at first. A few teachers. Then Jocelyn. Then others. Then the whole room. Not a standing ovation. But real. Honest. Earned. Ivy bowed her head once, then stepped back into the wings. I met her just off stage. She looked dazed, but proud. I said what I needed to, she whispered. You said it perfectly, I replied. We didn't stick around long after. There was a reception with cookies and lemonade, but Ivy was exhausted. So we ducked out the side door, drove home in the dark, windows cracked, cool spring air rolling in. But the fallout? That came swiftly. The next morning, I got a call from the assistant principal. The integrity board had concluded its review. The evidence, combined with Ivy's statement, had been more than enough. Bella and Lily were officially suspended for 1 week, stripped of all extracurricular positions, banned from student council and the upcoming student leadership retreat, and, most significantly, disqualified from prom court retroactively. They weren't expelled. That would have been overkill. But the message was clear. This school would not pretend this didn't happen. And their actions weren't just high school drama. Melissa, predictably, lost her mind. She called me that afternoon, voice sharp and shaking. "Are you proud of yourself, Kyle? You've destroyed their entire senior year." "I didn't destroy anything," I said evenly. "They did that themselves. They're just girls. They made a mistake. They weren't girls when they slashed a 16-year-old's dress and laughed about it." She scoffed. "So this was your big moment, huh? You've been waiting for a way to get back at me since we were kids." That one caught me off guard. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so wildly off base it didn't even sting. "This isn't about you, Melissa. It never was." "Oh, please," she snapped. "You've always been jealous. Mom loved me more, and you've been trying to punish me for that since high school." And there it was. The deep, rotten root of it all. I took a breath. "I was never jealous," I said calmly. "I just got tired of pretending your version of love was normal." She went silent. I continued. "You taught your daughters that winning matters more than kindness. That being pretty matters more than being good. And now, when that's come back to bite them, you're blaming everyone else. But you raised them, Melissa. You handed them the scissors." She hung up, and I knew that was the last time we'd speak for a long while. 2 days later, I got a letter from my mother. A real letter. Handwritten. 3 pages long. The first page was defensive, full of phrases like, "I didn't know," and "they didn't mean to hurt anyone." The second page tried guilt. "You're tearing the family apart." Ivy could have handled it privately. But the third page? That one cracked something open. It was an apology. Not perfect, not sweeping, but real. She admitted that she looked the other way, that she downplayed things because it was easier, that she didn't want to believe her granddaughters were capable of cruelty, so she chose not to look too closely. She ended it with, "I failed you when you were young, and I failed her now. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond right away, but Ivy read the letter, and she said quietly, "It's a start." And it was. Small. Late. But a start. The school year wound down. Ivy finished her final exams with straight A's. She accepted the offer to have her art featured in the local showcase. We started planning a quiet trip for the summer, just the two of us. Somewhere calm. Somewhere she could breathe. Jocelyn and a few other girls invited Ivy out to lunch on the last day of school. They laughed. Took new pictures. Not the ones where Ivy's the blurry friend in the background. These had her front and center, chin lifted, eyes bright. As for Bella and Lily, they returned to school after their suspension and kept their heads low. They avoided Ivy entirely. No apology. No confrontation. Just silence. But they were no longer admired. No longer untouchable. People saw them differently now. Because truth, once spoken, has a way of sticking. At the art showcase that summer, a woman approached Ivy after the event. She said she worked at a local nonprofit that offered summer internships to high school students interested in design and advocacy. She'd seen Ivy's collection. What I would have worn. She said it moved her. "You have something to say," she told Ivy. "And the world needs to hear it." Ivy looked at me, wide-eyed. "I'll think about it," she said. And I knew she would. Because the girl who sat silent on her floor, holding a torn dress in her lap, was gone. In her place stood someone taller. Not in height. In presence. A girl who had been broken and rebuilt herself stronger, sharper, smarter. And I was no longer just the dad trying to make up for his past. I was the man who finally stood up and said, "Enough." We left that night under a sky full of stars. No fanfare. No fireworks. Just peace. And as we drove home, Ivy rested her head against the window and whispered something I'll never forget. "They tried to take my night away, Dad. But I got my voice instead. And that was so much better."